Hello, hello, ¿cómo están todos? Hoy tenemos a una invitada de lujo, realmente. Tenemos a Carol Howe. Ella no solamente tiene 44 años siendo maestra de un curso de milagros, sino que es una de las pocas personas que quedan que conoció directamente a Helen y a Bill. Incluso ella tiene un libro que escribió sobre la biografía de Bill. Es una persona a la que yo personalmente admiro muchísimo. Probablemente es la maestra de un curso de milagros de la que yo más he aprendido o que más me ha ayudado. Y así que le vamos a dar la bienvenida y hoy en verdad que esta es una entrevista de lujo, de lujo. Hello, hi Carol.
How are
We
you,
have today, I gave an introduction explaining how you are one of the people that met personally Bill and Helen, and that you you even have a book about Bill.
Yes.
And that I also told them how much I've learned from you, which is
Wonderful.
you're probably, I've learned from many teachers, but I'm sure that you're the one that I've learned the most, even though this is,
Oh, bless your heart. How sweet of you. How sweet of you.
I listen to your daily, to your lessons like
Mhm.
every day. Even though I do the lessons myself, it's always refreshing to hear your voice because you give guidance and ideas that I probably haven't think about it. Uh,
Exactly. Exactly.
so or that I haven't seen it that way. So I'm truly am one of your students.
Bless your heart. It was really funny when it was, I think, December of, I can't remember if it was 19 or 2016 or 17, but it was about, let's say, about the 26th of December. And all of a sudden, this thought came into my mind that said, record all the lessons with commentary. And I go, what? You realize what that means? If I do lesson one, I'm committed for another 364 lessons. This isn't something I can just stop midstream. And it was kind of like, it was very clear. Whatever it takes, you must do the lessons with commentary. And because I realized that so many people might not even understand a key word. They might not be familiar with it, even though they're English speaking and so on. But not knowing the real meaning of that word really interferes with knowing what that lesson is saying. So I thought, I just have to make these as clear as possible, not so people can understand them better, so they can practice them better, which is the idea.
Y usted ha hecho un trabajo extraordinario con ese sentido, porque en verdad las lecciones, yo siempre que tengo cualquier duda, busco la lección, la explicación suya en YouTube y ahí entonces ya se me aclara todo. Así que me alegro muchísimo que le hayan puesto esa tarea y en verdad que la terminó. Okay. Bueno, well, I said that I'm really very, very grateful that they gave you, the spirit gave you that
That lesson.
that assignment
Assignment. Yes, assignment.
because that's an assignment that has helped me a lot and that I am extremely grateful for. I think it's for about maybe 4 or 5 years I've been listening to your lessons. I don't know, but you are definitely, it's like when I listen to you so much that when I open YouTube, you're always the one that comes on top. You see,
That's great. That's great.
okay. So my question now it's, I would like to, let me do the question in Spanish. Mi pregunta ahora es, ¿podemos hablar un poco de su relación con Bill Tedford? My question is, can we talk about your relationship with Bill Tedford?
Absolutely. Bill and I met under very strange and meant to be circumstances. And I will be very, very brief with how. It's like all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I get an invitation to attend a meeting on a university campus in Denver, where I lived at the time. And it said that Judy Scutch, she was not yet Whitson, she was still Judy Scutch, was going to be talking about the course, and that co-scribe Bill Thetford would be with her, even though he would not be speaking. Well, I wouldn't have missed that for anything. So my husband and I go out, but what the brochure neglected to say was that they were going to hold this outdoors. Now, this is May in Denver, Colorado. It can be cold in the evenings. And so I had just taken a little lightweight sweater. Even though Judy is a fabulous, compelling speaker, they had a stage and everything set up. I finally thought, I'm going to freeze to death if I sit here one more second. So I thought, I'm just going to have to get up and leave and find the first building I can find to walk inside. So I went to that first building I could find, opened the door.
And there he was.
And there he was, standing all by himself in this room. And I thought, that has to be Bill Thetford. So I walked up to him, introduced myself, thanked him profusely for all of his good work. But the most amazing thing was feeling an instant, impossible to describe connection with him. And all the way driving home, I was just kind of speechless. I'm rarely speechless. I was kind of speechless on that night. One thing led to another. I don't have time to tell you all the details, but it ended up at his invitation, my going out to Tiburon, that's the San Francisco Bay Area, in November of 1978. And that's when I had a chance to really meet Bill and Jerry Jampolsky and Judy and Bob Scutch, kind of the first family of A Course in Miracles. And they graciously just took me right in and included me as part of that first family of A Course in Miracles.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yes. And after that, Bill and I traveled back and forth.
Let me say, ¿no es eso fabuloso?
It's like he would come to stay with my family in Denver, and my little boys and husband were crazy about him too. And I would go out and stay in California with my Course in Miracles family, so to speak. And it was just marvelous. Bill is just an incredibly fantastic human being. And as years passed, and there were all kinds of ridiculous rumors out about him, even while he was still alive. In other words, things that just weren't true about his work at the CIA and stuff like that. So I thought, I must write his story from a firsthand perspective, because I have access to interviewing all the people who know him and that can complete his story. So I interviewed about 28 or 30 people, plus my own experience with him, which makes it a very full and complete picture of who he was, but more importantly, his story and the way he had to overcome difficulties and pain and family problems and everything else is everybody's story. Just the details are different. So the great value of this is not, oh, this is what he had for breakfast, this is what he did here. It's the way he had to approach his difficulties and pain and sorrow and anything else that came along in his life is the perfect guideline for us.
Yo he escuchado que Bill fue no solamente fue el escriba, sino que fue el primer alumno real del curso. ¿Qué tal fue tu experiencia con él? Now I'm going to say it in English. Okay. I heard that he was not only the scribe, but he was also like the first real student of the course.
Yes, he was the first person who his early life, I don't know if you've read the book, his early life was very, very difficult. He came from, by his own acknowledgement, a lower middle class family. He had an older boy was born before he was born, and that boy died when he was a few months old. Then his older sister was born, and he adored the older sister beyond description. And a few years later, when she was 9 years old and he was 7 years old, she suddenly died.
Oh, wow.
And this was such a shock to this little boy who adored this sister, followed her around, wanted to play with her little girlfriends and everything else. I mean, he was her shadow. It so knocked him for a loop, so to speak, that he was sick in bed with scarlet fever, a rheumatic heart, a little boy for a year and a half. A year and a half.
Oh,
No
wow.
TV, no games, no nothing. Just mom to read to him, and he would read to himself and his little dog. And then he had to go to a special school for kind of crippled children. And in any event, his early years were as difficult as kind of early years can be. And he just kind of kept following his from one career, part of his career to another. We, the readers, can watch him being led from one step of his life to another, and the lessons that he needed to learn and incorporate in that part of his life until he came to a triumphant end of his life, where he was so joyful and so sort of excited and happy that as the people who saw him that last weekend, he was often up on his tiptoes, and he was a very tall, slender man. He literally was so elevated with joy, he could not keep his feet on the ground. So
Oh,
a story that takes you from great pain and deprivation and all sorts of stuff in between into a joyous homecoming. How can that not be a model for all the rest of us? So that's the purpose of his story, not just this is what he did and this is where he went to work. It's like, this is how he overcame. This is how he practiced. This is how he put one little toe in the water, so to speak, to experiment. And it worked.
it works for him. And
And
it
it
works for
worked
it works for,
everybody. Yes.
I was going to say, trabajó para él y en verdad trabajó para todos. Certainly, it has worked for me huge time, but it has also worked for all the people that I've interviewed, all the other teachers, everybody that I know of that has taken the course mediocrely.
Yes, yes, yes.
So not even the people that are like the very, very devout students, but people who have taken the course casually. Even for those people, it makes a huge difference.
Yes.
Quiero decir ahora que y ha trabajado no solamente trabajó para Bill Tedford, sino que el curso ha hecho milagros en la vida de todos los maestros que yo conozco. Ciertamente en mi vida ha hecho grandes milagros. Now, do you want to say something? Because you know him. I haven't read the book, but if you were to describe like the lessons that Bill Tedford learned in his life and that we can model after him, can you mention some of them?
I can absolutely mention the main one.
Okay, give me 1 second.
Okay.
Si usted puede tomar algunas de las lecciones que Bill Tedford aprendió en el curso, ¿nos podría por favor mencionar algunas?
And this is it. Once he got once finally the course was published and in the hands of Judy Scutch Whitson, and he had kept Helen on beyond the time when she was supposed to retire, because she was 14 years older than he. So he then, once he got her retired, he himself took early retirement. He was only 55 when he left, because after what he had been through for 11 years, he couldn't just go back to being a college professor. So he took early retirement, ended up with the Scutches moving to California. That's kind of where now the new headquarters for the course is going to be. And people would ask him, often in my presence, they would say, "Now, Bill, that you're retired, now what are you going to do?" And he would say, "Practice forgiveness." And they would look at him kind of like, that's a conversation stopper. So occasionally they would say, "But like, what are you going to be doing?" And he said, "Practice forgiveness." So his job, as far as he was concerned, the only thing that mattered was that he keep releasing, because practicing forgiveness needs to be translated into releasing your own guilt, releasing your own false beliefs. And if that's not going to be job one, nothing else really matters. He knew what mattered. And it was through that constant being devoted to releasing. And the last people he released, of course, were Helen and Ken. Those were his major, not only were they the major partners in bringing the course forward, we know we're drawn into the company of people who mirror things about ourselves that we need to heal within ourselves. So it was contentious sometimes. They drove each other crazy, like really crazy on many occasions. And so it was kind of like a cauldron where healing was taking place at the same time that the work was being done. And so by the end of his life, he truly, truly had released everything in himself that he had projected onto Helen and onto Ken and everybody else in the process. But those were the main holdouts, shall we say.
Oh, wow. Well, that's certainly somebody, okay, let me speak in English. Let me just,
Okay.
alguien que llega a esa madurez de tomar un retiro temprano para dedicarse solamente a practicar el perdón, a cambiar su forma de ver la vida. Realmente es una persona que ha alcanzado una idea muy clara de qué es importante. Somebody that has come to that level of maturity as to take an early retirement, to dedicate himself to forgiveness, to work on his guilt. And
Yes.
it's somebody that has gotten to a place that for most of us is actually not in this lifetime.
Right. And you see, what one must realize is Bill was not just some professor at Columbia University. He had multiple very high level jobs, and he was considered one of the foremost brilliant psychologists in the world, not just related to A Course in Miracles or not just related to Columbia University. He was well known and revered throughout the psychological world. Whether he had anything to do with A Course in Miracles or not, he was held in the highest esteem for his brilliance generally, so to speak.
Well, and it must certainly be something that makes you like happy to have had the opportunity not only to meet him in person, but also the opportunity to know the person that he was, the struggles that he went
Absolutely.
through, and how he was able to forgive.
Yes.
And
Absolutely and totally. So that's why he is the poster child for what we all need to do. And he kind of, through his own life, promises if you will explore, if you will let your relationships reveal to you what you're holding against yourself, you too can have a fantastic, not just ending. I don't want people to think, oh, you finally change your mind and you're finally joyful and then you die. It's like that's what he happened to do, but that's not everybody's course of action. You can come to a place of great serenity and great peace that comes from letting go of all this baggage that we're carrying, and then continue to live a very happy and productive life. His life just happened to be very dramatic because he comes to this final place, and then, since you haven't read the book, you don't know this, he ends up declaring his independence on the 4th of July, 88. He goes out in a blaze of glory.
awesome. Ahora le quiero hacer una pregunta que de algo que oí que usted dijo, que si tu vida es un desastre es porque te odias a ti mismo. Yo le escuché a usted decir esa frase, pero me gustaría que explicara un poco más aquí sobre qué significado tiene. Now I'm going to say it in English.
Okay.
I heard you saying that if your life is a mess, it's because you hate yourself.
Yes. And
And,
you feel guilty.
and you also, and if you can please elaborate about what that means.
Yes, I will. If you are going to take all of those words and ideas in the course and reduce them down to their core, it would be this. Remember the phrase in the latter part of the text where it talks about the tiny mad idea at which you remembered not to laugh. Now, that tiny mad idea is that you have ruined yourself, that you've destroyed yourself, that you have stopped being the perfect presence of love that you are, and the sorrow and the grief and the pain we carry over the belief this is not a fact, because it is impossible for that to occur. But the very deeply held built-in belief that we have destroyed the perfection, the loving perfection of us. And most of that kind of sits down there in your unconscious mind, where it influences negatively your life experience, but you're not necessarily aware of it. In other words, because it's buried. So what happens? So that's a major teaching of the course. The other major teaching is, guess what? You will discover what you're holding against yourself, the specifics of what you believe you have ruined yourself over through your relationships. Your relationships are going to stand there, the people you don't like are going to stand there like a mirror, and they are going to show you with exact precision what you hold against yourself, so that you don't have to wonder, like, I wonder what I feel guilty about. I wonder how I've hurt myself or somebody else. People will parade through your life standing there, and you can call them the messengers, the mirrors, the triggers. They don't cause our pain. What they do is trigger our own false beliefs about ourselves, and we can lump that together as the guilt we hold over diminishing ourselves, ruining ourselves, compromising ourselves. And the message of the course is none of that is possible, which is why guilt is insane. It's an ego ploy, which is a whole nother story. We can't talk about every part of the story there is to talk about, but nevertheless, it's like you can't be guilty. You do not have the capacity to change your basic nature, which is loving, eternal, conscious awareness, period.
Volvemos a, hablando un poco, me encanta que trajo a colación lo de la relación, porque es muy difícil para, bueno, ciertamente yo lo puedo entender ahora, pero a mí me tomó muchos años entender que las demás personas eran mi espejo y de que cuando yo me enojaba con alguien, lo que esa persona hizo no tenía nada que ver con mi enojo. Eso toma tiempo. Sin embargo, yo le he visto a usted trabajando con personas que es como tan fácil que llega a darse cuenta de ayudar a la persona que se dé cuenta de cómo es su espejo, de qué es la parte que le está reflejando. Entonces, ¿podría hablarnos un poco más de cómo es que ese proceso que usted tan lindo lo describe siempre? Okay, now I'm going to say it in English. Okay. I'm very happy that you mentioned the relationships and the, especially because what I've seen you talking a lot about the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen you also working with people on a one-on-one online that people call you and you talk about it. Mm-hmm. And you seem to have this natural talent to help people realize how the people that are in their lives are the messengers, and don't kill the messenger without reading the message, without getting
because another messenger will come along. If you don't get it this time, it won't go away. One messenger will follow along behind another messenger until you pay attention.
Yeah. Do you want to elaborate a little bit more about that? Because it's certainly, that's something that now I can understand so clearly. It is so easy for me to see that if I get mad at somebody, whatever that person did has nothing to do with my madness. But it took me so many years.
It's because, and here's the reason why. Because all of us learned erroneously when we were little kids that forgiveness, because the Course says forgiveness gives you everything. Forgiveness is the key to happiness. Forgiveness allows your life to be fabulous. But if we believe that forgiveness is pardoning another person because that other person is the problem, we've entirely missed the point. Because forgiveness is not pardoning, like, oh, well, you hurt me, but I guess somehow I'm supposed to be okay with that. That is impossible. However, so I like to not even use the word forgiveness. I use the word release, because we're not talking about what someone else does to us. We're talking about discovering what I am doing to myself. And this person is standing here helping me see that. So what forgiveness really is discovering how I fear I have diminished myself, and looking at this anew. And I have a whole process that I call a release process that I take clients through, and I've done this with thousands of people, and it works all the time.
¿Quiere hablarnos un poco de ese proceso? Do you want to talk a little bit about that process?
I can. I don't know how much time we've got, but I can at least give you some very important basic information to go into it. And here is this. Now, this is going to be what I call time and space information. In other words, we're now not talking metaphysics. We're just talking about how things are on planet Earth, since we think we're on planet Earth. And here it is. When babies are born, and we choose our parents, that's the metaphysical part. But okay, now here I am. I'm a baby, I'm a toddler, I'm a little 2-year-old. As the young of the species, I have one goal at that stage of life, and that is survival. So my left brain, which is the thinking part of the brain, is physically present, but it's not online yet. I don't need it. I only need my right brain, which is intuitive, instinctive, feeling, nonverbal, because like the young of all species, whether you're a fish or an elephant or a human, the young have to model, they have to pay attention, they have to feel out like this person or situation is safe to go toward. This person or situation I recoil from. There's something alarming or hurtful or frightening or something. All of this is happening at a non-verbal level, at a feeling level only. Now, it's obvious that if I've got just a right brain, I don't have even a frontal lobe yet, I'm going to misinterpret a lot of what's going on. I don't have the horsepower yet to know what's really happening. So when I'm about 3 years old, the left brain, which is the thinking mind, comes online. And now with my thinking mind, this is like the really short version, I start to build an ego. You can call it an ego, a sense of personal self, a self-concept. The whole last chapter of the text is it uses that phrase self-concept a lot, or I like to think of it as the story of me. It is a manufactured notion of myself and its roots. In other words, where I'm gathering my raw material for this person that I'm just thinking into existence has its roots in this early experience. Now, in this early experience, I don't know myself as a person. All I know is this is a matrix of experience that I am. Now, this matrix of experience is the fertile grounds for building this story of me. And guess what? There's kind of a mess in everybody's life in this early experience. In other words, whatever's going on with the parents, whatever's going on with the country, the culture, the century, the religion, the social status that I'm sort of swimming around in my experience, all of that becomes incorporated in what I think of as my personal self. And guess what? A lot of that is just as false as it can be, not because there's any evil doing going on. It's because this is the way the system works. So here's the problem. In this self-concept that I am building, and that goes on until I'm about 23 years old, and then I'm kind of finished, I end up believing, here is the key idea, I end up believing things about myself that are absolutely false, but I have no way of knowing that they aren't the truth. And I can tell you what those ideas are. People who believe they aren't valuable, they're not worthy, they can't do things right, they don't have the right to ask for what they want, they don't get to say no, they're you get the picture. In other words, ideas about ourselves, but because they come from this early experience, listen to this, we don't know those as beliefs, we incorporate those as this is the truth, the flawed, unfortunate truth about myself. And while I have built this story of me, a totally false story, I don't know that, I'm building my defenses. How I'm going to keep people from knowing this? How am I going to learn to somehow overcome the fact that I'm no good or something like that? So by the time I'm an adult, the guilt of having ruined myself, and a bunch of this is down in my unconscious mind, but that's where this guilt comes from if we reduce it to our time and space experience. I can't tell you the number of people I have spoken with in the past 30, 35 years since I added counseling to everything else I was doing. And you would think that everybody on the planet is given about 8 words because everybody
Everybody's suffering from the same.
Everybody is suffering from the same variation of the very same idea that I have somehow ruined myself. Now, this is what the Course is talking about, where it says you feel like you're a destroyer. You fear that you've ruined yourself. It's based upon this early experience that we have no way of knowing is completely false. So now I've got lodged in my brain, so to speak, ideas about myself that I am positive are true. How could I know otherwise since they've been with me before my thinking mind came online? Kind of like I've had arms and legs from the beginning. We think I've been unworthy and uninteresting and unimportant from the beginning. We just think that's built in like ears or something, and that I just have to deal with it.
Yo me acuerdo claramente que de niña yo pensaba que algo estaba, pero realmente mal conmigo. Yo incluso recuerdo que yo pensaba como que yo me iba a morir antes de los 15 años porque me encontraba tan debilucha. And I remember that as a child, I thought that something was really wrong with me, like really wrong. Like I thought that I was not going to be able to even be alive at 15 because something was not making sense in me.
Yes, it was like not, and I grew up in because I'm very old, I grew up with parents during that silent generation where it was like children are to be seen and not heard, which is a horrible way to raise children. In other words, they're just kind of objects. They need to look nice and be polite and don't bother anybody and don't ask for anything and don't say no, and just, they didn't know that children had emotional needs. You know, that's kind of the way that was. But in addition to that, I also knew from the time I was about 5 years old, something's missing here. Something's not right here. You probably had the same thing. It's like, and I was on the quest from the time I started school, trying to find out what's missing and what's wrong right offhand. Well, what was missing and wrong was what got programmed in was not true. And so the point of A Course in Miracles is to help undo the false programming and replace it with more and more and more of what is true about us, that we are precious, that we're pure, that we're valuable, that we have no way of separating ourselves off from everything else. And as the Course, which is a brilliant teaching of non-duality, will say, this is probably, I have found out about this, that probably of all teachings of non-duality, the Course is the only one that focuses so heavily on, you can get to what it is you're blaming yourself for through your relationships. Healing through relationships is unique to the Course in this particular field, so to speak, the field of the teachings of non-duality. And those teachings say, your world of time and space that appears to be solid and objective and real isn't. And even if you think it is an exact moment by moment replica. This is why forgiveness and release is so important, because your internal experience, your external experience is an exact moment by moment replica of your own beliefs about yourself.
Y eso es tan, pero tan importante, porque como para parafrasear algo que la oí escuchar a usted decir, cuando tenemos problemas, cuando algo no está bien en nuestra vida, cuando nos enojamos con otras personas, nosotros tenemos o pensamos que la otra persona es la causante de nuestro problema y no nos damos cuenta de que ellos no son no son los causantes, sino que son el detonante, que son dos cosas muy diferentes. ¿Podría, por favor, hablarnos sobre eso? And now that's so important because I heard you saying that something that is so appropriate that I would like you to elaborate a little bit more about it. And it is when you said that people go around in life thinking that other people are the cause of their pain and sufferings, and they don't realize that they are the triggers, that the others are the triggers. Can you please talk?
Yes, yes, I absolutely can. Now, but for all of this to make sense, we have to realize, and the course talks about this a lot. It says your world, which includes all the people in your world, the way the people in your world appear to treat you, your health, your financial circumstances, whether the bugs eat your bushes or not. In other words, every detail of your life is an exact replica of the train of thoughts that goes through your mind. So your outer world is an exact mirror of the things you believe about yourself. Wow. Well, if I'm carrying around beliefs of I'm not valuable, I can't do anything right, and you can believe some positive things as well, but if you've got yourself a load of nobody really wants to have me around and I can't do things right, and no matter how hard I try, I strike out, guess what? Your world is going to go, and this is the cartoon version. It's like, if that's what you're going to think about, okay, it will show up out here, and people and circumstances will appear to ignore you, mistreat you. You'll get sick. All kinds of things will happen, but it's happening because you're declaring that it's happening. You cannot divorce your inner life from every detail of your outer life. And certainly that includes your relationships. So if it appears that somebody comes along and is mistreating you in some way, or it doesn't matter what it is, you can rest with 100% assurance, this person is mirroring something that I am doing to myself, or something that I feel guilty about. And I'll walk you through a couple of very important steps so that people can know what this is about. Let's say there's somebody in your life who just drives you crazy and you think they're causing the problem. They're not. They're helping you see what the problem is. And you say, they are so lazy, and they're careless and they're lazy and they don't take responsibility. And that upsets me. See, we use that language, like their behavior upsets me, not a chance. Their behavior is triggering my guilt, my belief that I have ruined myself because I've done the same thing. So I will ask people, I will say when they've got, they can't stand this family member or this next door neighbor or this whatever it is. And it's like, okay, fill in the blank. This person drives me crazy because they are so, okay, so let's say they fill it in that they're lazy and they're whatever all I just said. So in any event, I will ask them, is there any possibility that you can ever think of a time when you were ever lazy or didn't finish something? It's like, can you ever think of a time? And everybody, when they're being honest, will say, yeah. I
Yeah.
can think of a time. So here's where the healing begins. I can say, I can't tell you how many times I've done this. Like, okay, think of a time when you were lazy or you didn't finish a job that you had committed to, whatever, that's the topic we're talking about now. at that moment, with those circumstances, with whatever was going on in your life at that moment, did you have any other choice at that moment? Not now looking back at it, but at that moment to do anything else? And the answer is always no. In other words, whatever they did in those circumstances, or I should say what we all do in those circumstances, is a survival level thing. In other words, there's some kind of a threat. This is my response to it. And it doesn't have to be an outer threat. It can just be an inner belief that I'm no good and I don't know what I'm doing. In other words, it's like, so threats can come in all flavors, so to speak. And so when I can get people to realize, you know, when you were lazy and didn't finish a job and didn't do it right, you were doing at that moment the highest and best you were capable of doing with whatever was stirred up in you, with whatever was going on with you, with whatever it is you felt you had to protect yourself from, etc. And no one can be faulted for trying to survive. So you were trying to survive. That person is trying to survive. Everybody is doing the highest and best they can do, given the load we carry with us. And often we're not even aware of it, because if you're not into this sort of thing, you might be so busy with your addictions and your distractions and your busyness that it doesn't come into your consciousness that you feel unloved and unlovable and unworthy and like nobody likes you. And yet you're aware of the pain and the guilt. And so all you know is you're uncomfortable, you're in pain. And so you run to your drugs and your alcohol and your sex and your food and your electronics and your Facebook and your everything else, so that you won't feel how you are actually feeling. So this is all about get all the stuff out of the way. Let's let what's really going on within you come up. And at this point, some upset can come up. It's like, good, let the upset come up. One of the worst things we've learned to do is to treat our emotional nature like it's a stepchild, or like it's an illness, or like it means we're weak, or we don't know how to do life right. And so we try to suppress how we feel, which throws gasoline on the fire. In other words, it's like it makes everything worse. So the first thing at this point we have to do is, if upset comes up, if you feel scared, if you feel tightness in the body, if you feel grief-stricken, whatever it is, right now, take all the stories away. Forget what you think any of this upset is about. Now, job one is dealing with this upset and treating it like a scared little child you're going to pick up and you're going to put in your lap and you're going to comfort it and you're going to say, you are so welcome to be here, absolutely, as long as you want to be here. Now, how many people do you know who handle their emotions that way?
Very few, muy
Very
pocas.
few.
Muy, pero muy pocas. Y es hermoso. A mí me encanta. Yo la he visto a usted trabajar con las personas y veo como la transformación que hace. Y me encanta, realmente me inspira mucho ver el proceso que hace con el cuerpo de la persona, cómo conecta a la persona con lo que está sintiendo en ese momento. I really seen you in YouTube working with people, and I love the way that you connect people with what they're feeling in their body. What is
Yes.
in their body now. That is so, but so precious, really, because we have the tendency to mask our feeling with our angers, with our emotion. I don't know about anything but what is really going on.
And you see, this happens because when we were in those early 3 years, and let's say we cried, or we asked for something, or we did something that the parents or the whoever else didn't like, and so we associate our upset often with punishment, like, you better stop that crying now or I'll give you something to cry about. Or you did something that you didn't realize was amusing to the adults, and they started laughing at you, and you were humiliated. In other words, it's like, it's the feedback we got that made us start at the very beginning holding in our emotions. From the time you've probably been around babies or toddlers who might fall and hurt themselves, the first thing you might hear them do is like hold the breath before they let out a cry. From the beginning, we instinctively know if we hold in, it cuts off pain, emotional pain, physical pain. So we grow up with this horrible notion that there's something the matter with our emotions, not realizing our own body chemistry is creating the emotions. Do you know that? Do you know how your emotions are created in the first place?
Actually, would you please talk about that? Let me not translate. De hecho, me encantaría que hable más sobre las emociones y que nos explique más sobre ese tema.
It's like, this is what happens. Let's say that a bus is coming at you, and you've got to hurry up and get out of the way so you don't get run over by the bus. That the brain senses danger to your physical body, and so we use the language, it turns on the stress response, which means it dumps in about 1,200, we'll call them emergency chemicals, that replace your normal body chemistry. In other words, it changes what's in the trillions of cells of your body. So there is an instant replacement. And what this new body chemistry that's dumped into all the cells of the body increases your heart rate, it increases your blood pressure, it turns off things like digestion, which you don't need to be digesting food if you're trying to escape from being run over by a bus or eaten by a lion or something like that. So it temporarily turns off body functions like long-term cell regeneration. Who needs to be doing that if now I'm trying to stay alive, which is what I'm trying to do under those circumstances. Now, in the case of physical danger like that, if I get to the other side of the road and I didn't get run over, it's like, oh, my heart might pound for a few minutes and so on, but then I realize everything's okay. My normal body chemistry now comes back, completely takes into all the cells of the body and replaces that. Great. Okay, so now let's say all of a sudden you have to give a speech to 1,000 people and you're afraid of standing up in front of people, because now it's not your physical body that's going to be run over by something, but boy, your sense of ego self could be, what if I screw this up? What if they laugh at me? What if I forget what I'm going to say? So again, see, the brain only has one stress response that it's got to use for all occasions. So once again, turns on the stress response, and body chemistry is changed, and you feel all upset and nervous and so on, but you manage to get through it, and then your body chemistry returns to normal. Now, here's what's the problem. In a case of where in all cases, when the chemicals are dropped into the body, that creates my emotional state. Most people have no idea where their emotions come from. I'm just upset, but who knows where that comes from? It comes from this change in your body chemistry. It's literally the new chemistry in each cell of the body that creates anger, grief, despair, all of those things that we consider emotions. So this is why it is so totally false to say that person made me so angry. Of course, they don't make you angry. They can't get inside your brain and change your body chemistry. Or this person is so upsetting, I could scream. They aren't upsetting you. What these triggering people are doing is it because they are mirroring things that I believe about myself, those beliefs that I am worthless or I am unlovable or nobody is here for me. Those ideas the brain sees as a threat to the organism as well. It's just as much a threat as the lion or people laughing at me in the auditorium. So it turns on its stress response. And you might say that's the third major way it turns it on. Same chemicals get dumped in. Now listen to this carefully. If I now go, I'm not feeling these emotions. Nope. I'm running to all my addictions and distractions. No, as far as I'm concerned, these emotions are the enemy. Now I'm in a loop I can't get out of, because once I've declared them off base, they're the enemy, they're now in the same category as the laughing people or the lion that's about to eat me. So every moment that I resist my emotions, stress response is turned on, and the same chemicals that are causing my emotions, I keep turning on again and again and again, and I'm in a closed loop I will never get out of unless I go, I've got to approach this differently. And this
There is another way.
there's another way, and it's not just an optional other way.
Hay otra manera.
It's an essential other way, and it's this: to go, emotions, you are not the enemy. I will be sad or angry. Anger is a secondary emotion. Underneath it is always grief and upset and so on and so forth. But if you go, I'm now going to treat my emotions as a friend, as you have every right to be here, instead of an enemy, I will finally turn off my stress response. I will finally let my body chemistry settle, and the grief and the anger will disappear. But as long as I fight against it, I keep recreating it second by second by second. What do you think about that?
I 100% agree with you. Estoy completamente de acuerdo con usted. Hay otra cosa antes de que terminemos, que lamentablemente se nos va el tiempo, pero que quiero que que nos hable un poco sobre el perdón. Usted siempre define el perdón como soltar los resentimientos y juzgar, dejar de juzgar a los demás. Y eso soltar los resentimientos y las críticas a otros y a uno mismo, me parece a mí como que es tan elemental ahora, pero también tan poderoso. ¿Nos podría, por favor, hablar de eso? Well, we're almost running out of time, but I don't want to let you go. I could speak with you forever, but I don't want to let you go without talking about forgiveness.
Okay, because now forgiveness is going to be, now I've got my person over here that I used to pretend like caused my pain. But now I realize they don't have any way to get in my brain and cause my pain. But what their behavior does is trigger my own fear, my own self-condemnation about my behavior that's just like that. So now I am the one triggering my stress response, because now I'm worried and afraid that I'm the bad one. And I'm the bad one in exactly as an exact match for this person out here. So they have triggered my own false belief about myself that got installed when I was 2. And now that they have triggered this, it's my job to do two things. First is allow the emotions to be there. Forget the story at the moment. Allow the emotions to be there. Allow the sensations in the body to be there. And then when everything settles, then I can go, yes, I can see, I believe some things about myself that aren't true. And I believe that the way I behaved kind of proves that I'm a bad person and that I'm guilty and so on and so forth. And then we go, but this is now a big lie. And see, all of the forgiveness, which prefer to call as a releasing process, I might have some mirrors out here, but this is all a strictly internal process. It's not about anybody else ever. It's about what I fear I have turned myself into. And now I have to apply an antidote to this. I have to go, yes, this has been my behavior. But now you know what I need to remember? All words and deeds, the moment they are spoken or performed, listen very carefully, they cease to exist. Our past isn't stored anywhere. It's not like I can go pick a library book off the shelf and it's like, oh my God, there's every bad thing I've ever done or said. It's like, there is no storage. It's gone. So the things that we are blaming ourselves for today are pointless because nothing it remains. But you know what we've all been taught? We've been taught that cause and effect is kind of like a horizontal line. And now I'm suffering today from what happened a long time ago. That's impossible because what happened a long time ago is like a great big blank. It's not there. Cause and effect, including how I feel and what's happening in my life, is a vertical arrangement. Cause and effect are in the very same moment, and it's this moment right now. This moment is the only moment there is, and it's the moment of power. Because this is where I can let what I've seen mirrored in other people go, I sure can see how I've been blaming myself. I can see how I've insisted that I'm a guilty person and so on and so forth. So it's my assessment of myself in this moment. It's today's belief about myself, these awful beliefs about myself, not any words or deeds that happened earlier, that is the source of all my difficulty. So now we're reducing it to what really is the issue. It really is those things I believe about myself that I think are the truth about myself that I feel so terribly, horribly guilty about. So once I learn nothing that I've done or said, nothing that, of course, there's no future yet. So I can go, do you mean I can change my mind right now in this moment and I can get a new effect right now in this moment, not 5 years from now? Absolutely. That's what the course is for. It's to say, in this moment, we're going to replace the notion that you're this little piece of fill in the blank with you are still as God created you, except I'm now going to make it personal. It's like, I'm still as I was created because there's not anything that can override that. It's like right now, I'm going to focus my all powerful attention on what is inevitably true about me. Doesn't matter what I've done or said, doesn't matter what I will do or say. The only thing that matters is I'm now going to focus my all powerful attention on what I absolutely will claim as my birthright. I am an expression forever of love itself. And that's what I'm going to put my attention now. That's
That
how.
reminds me when the course says that you're never mad for the reason that you believe that you think. That was so hard for me to understand. Eso
Well,
me acuerda.
Well, this is what it's all about. This is like untangling. It's helping you see forgiveness, which I choose to refer to as release.
I'm sorry, let me translate that.
Okay.
Eso me acuerda con la parte del curso, cuando el curso dice que nosotros nunca estamos enojados por la razón que creemos.
Strictly an internal process. It's strictly my being aware of, I see what I fear in myself out here, but I put it out here to see. Remember, everything out here is a reflection of what's in my mind. So I just see a person who's reflecting exactly what I think about myself. And now I'm going to treat both myself and inevitably the other person from this brand new perspective. And that's what forgiveness is about. It's like there's not any past or future. There's only right now. And right now, I have all the power in the world to go, I am going to change my mind. I want all the help in the world. And I'm going to pick up those lessons, or I'm going to do whatever other kind of prayer I do. Because remember, it's where I focus my attention. All this time I've been busy focusing my attention on what's wrong with me because I do it via my defenses. Because when I defend against something, I'm paying attention to it. So I'm going to forget all that, and I'm going to get in the present moment that I'm in. And it's like, I'm coming to my rescue, so to speak. I'm now going to claim, with the course as my guide, or with whatever else helper is your guide, to keep reminding me I'm at home, I'm still perfect, I'm still an expression of love. Nothing I've done or said has anything to do with anything. And now I'm going to keep this in mind. And my reason for being here now is to be truly helpful, follow my intuition, follow my guidance, which is always going to cement in my awareness the fact of my own loving nature. It's like, if I decide that's what I'm going to do, there's no other big outside force that's going to get in the way. I'm the big force. It's like, there's not anything that's going to challenge me. It's only when I'm confused that there's a problem. So I'm just getting myself unconfused. That's one way to look at it.
El curso dice que no es que nosotros no es que seamos poco lo que nosotros tememos, es que somos, lo que tememos es que somos poderosos más allá de lo que pensamos. The course itself says that it's not that we're very little that we're afraid of, it's that we're powerful beyond belief, really.
Yes, absolutely. And all of the power is always right here in this moment. And nothing and nobody is going to take it away from us. Now, we have misused our power. We haven't made it smaller. We have misused it by believing things that aren't true. But believing things that aren't true isn't a crime. It's a mistake, because it's ending up with a life experience that's unsatisfactory. But guess what? Today, not just today, but this moment is a brand new, clean moment. Now, how are we going to behave? How are we going to focus our attention in this brand new, clean moment that I am 100% in charge of? And this makes it a little bit easy. I only have 2 choices. I don't have 45 choices to choose from. I've either got, I'm going to focus my all-powerful attention on the care and maintenance of the story of me. So that's going to be about getting and defending and blaming and worrying and so on and so forth. Or I'm going to be focusing my all-powerful attention on how I can be helpful, how I can listen, how I can kind of feel that uplift when something feels right. Like, I think I need to follow this. Every moment of every day, we're choosing between those 2 and only those 2 options. So if I decide I want to experience the loving presence that I am. I don't know how all of this works, but that seems like a better idea than what I've been doing so far. And the ego mind is going to clamor and carry on. But what if you don't plan? What if you lose all your money? What if anybody thinks you're crazy? And you go, I am so not listening to that. I am so not listening, because I can discover for myself that I feel better when I'm being open, when I'm telling the truth, when I'm allowing myself to feel how I feel, when I genuinely am interested in the welfare of the other people who aren't other at all. There's only the illusion of otherness. So all of the goodwill or the helpfulness or the being there for other people, the gifts that I give, the gifts that I choose to give, whether it's listening, whether it's paying attention, whether it's giving somebody money, if that's what you need to do, whatever it is, remember this. Since I'm the giver of the gift, that intention is in my mind. And what's in my mind becomes my experience. So when I decide to be generous to someone else, when I decide to see that their whatever their bad behavior is really a desperate call for their own help, and I choose to answer that call by being understanding, being kind, whatever it is, that intention to do for them accrues to me first. I am always the recipient of what I offer. So if I'm going to offer hatred and blame and all the things that we would call are hurtful or negative, don't for a second think that you're going to be left out of that formula. Whatever
No.
it is that you want for someone else, you may never say a word about it. You might say,
it's coming back. Va a regresar.
It's not that it comes back, it's that it never leaves you. It was in your mind in the beginning, if you had a hateful thought, and from the moment there is that, as long as you retain that hateful thought, you will reap the whirlwind, so to speak, of harboring a hateful thought. But whenever you choose, you can go, well, that was a mistake. I think I just saw myself and everything erroneously.
Yo normalmente cuando me descubro a mí misma pensando algo en contra de otra persona o mal, lo suelto como si fuera una papa caliente. Me imagino que es una papa caliente. I myself, whenever I see myself thinking bad about somebody else or in an emotion that it's not the one that I want, I imagine that it's like a hot potato and I try to get rid of it as soon as I can.
Well, and pretty soon, then this doesn't even feel like a decision. In other words, because it feels so good and so normal to be kind of following your intuition. And if an idea comes to your mind, like, I think that sounds like a good idea. I think I'll try that. In other words, we all recognize when there's kind of an uplift, and we don't try to plan or fix or like, I've got to get my financial future all taken out. You can't plan your financial future now. If you want your financial future to be whatever it is you want it to be, you keep your attitude in a very loving, open-hearted, focusing on being as loving to yourself and others as possible, and your financial situation is going to take care of itself. You don't have to worry, but what if something goes wrong? Well, nothing is going to go wrong. If this goes wrong, something else will go right. We carry our own, if you want to call it, protection with us moment by moment by moment when we stay focused on, I am here to be truly helpful. I'm here not to blame myself or anybody else. I'm here to see the big picture of what's going on. I'm here to be a plus instead of a minus on the planet, however you want to say it. It's like, stick with, how do I make this moment the best possible moment? And you will never have to worry about moments hereafter, because you will get in the habit of, the next moment, I want the best for everybody. The next moment, I'm going to help this guy across the street. The next moment, in other words, you get the picture. I become acclimated to benevolence. I become acclimated to wanting the best for everybody, including whoever you've got in the villain category. In other words, and as more and more and more, my default position is, I'm here to be helpful to whomever is sent to me, so to speak, if we use it that way. And then you don't have to worry at all about anything, really.
Carol, esta ha sido una entrevista maravillosa y estoy segurísima que le ha fascinado a las personas que nos están viendo, y que no solamente eso, sino que esta es una de esas entrevistas que transforman la vida de las personas. Tenemos entre miles de personas que están participando en este evento, que son personas que están siendo introducidas por primera vez al curso de milagro. Es decir, no son personas que conocen el curso, sino que son personas que están conociendo la filosofía del curso a través de este evento. Este evento es, si tú quieres, como se dice, la puerta de entrada al curso. Para esas personas, antes de despedirnos, y de nuevo le digo que me encantaría seguir, porque es que son tan sabias sus palabras, y es una maestra tan avanzada del curso, pero para esas personas, ¿tendría algo que decirles para que los ayude al camino que les espera? Well, we have thousands of people participating in this event.
How many did you say?
Well, last year I had 10,000, but it's going to be a lot more this year. So it's going to be, and about 80% of those people are new. Because what happened is that I paid a lot of publicity for the general public, like for people that have relationship issues, that for people that has health issues. That's why it attracts a lot of people that are not course people, but the event is all about the course.
Yeah.
So for those people who are being introduced now to the course, it's there, and listening to you and listening to all those other teachers, is there anything that you would like to tell them before we finish? So, like, to encourage them to go into.
I would say, in my very early working days, after I taught school for a few years, I was a systems engineer with IBM. So I know a whole lot, even though that was in the very early days, I know a whole lot about programming and finding the programming errors and correcting them. And this is what we're about. We're looking for the things that we believe about ourselves that are small, that are limiting. So instead of trying to hide it and look the other way, we want to go, I want to notice what I really honestly do believe about myself. And I don't think it's a belief, I think it's the truth. And we're going to put those things that I fear are some sort of awful truths out on the table. And it's like, we're going to replace these with what really is the truth. We're going to debug your brain. Your brain has been hacked. It's got malware in it. You believe things about yourself that aren't true. And it's causing your life experience to be way less than you deserve for it to be. Well, everybody knows if you've got malware in your computer, you don't go, oh, I do wish it would go away. You do something proactive. You either take it to a store, you download some kind of a replacement program, you do something to replace what's causing your computer not to work with what allows it to run flawlessly. We're doing the same thing. we're through our relationships, we're discovering we've got a rat's nest of stuff we believe about ourselves. We need that to be replaced with a constant dose of you are good, you are pure, you're beloved, you're eternal. Keep remembering how much you're appreciated. Keep remembering how much you have to offer. Keep remembering that there's no way you can do anything to actually hurt yourself. So, can you see how what we're doing is replacing a big lie about ourselves with more and more and more the truth about ourselves? But we have to hear it over and over and over again. That's why the lessons in the course are so repetitive, because that's what it takes to replace. And at the time and space level, your brain will literally start to grow new neural networks as you start to really focus on, I really am a lovable presence. There's no way I can be other than this, or whatever the daily lesson is. It's like, so take that to heart. Focus your attention on it. 20 seconds of focusing on these true, real ideas about yourself will start to grow new neural networks. And pretty soon you'll have more and more new neural networks that reflect the truth about us instead of this horrible lie about us. That's what it's for.
Muchas, pero muchísimas gracias, Carol. Ha sido un placer enorme. Un abrazo. Thank you really, really very much. I deeply appreciate this interview. It's, let me just